One of the most insightful experiences that I had early on in my ministry as a pastor to be at that time was when I was working as a ministerial trainee in a small southern church in a army town. And while I was serving there and learning the ropes of preaching and teaching, I remember the senior pastor that was training me encouraging me to go out and to build relationships in the community, to get to know people and practice sharing my faith. So I did so. I fancied myself a poet. Some days I still do, even though now I highly doubt I'll ever get that book of poems typed up, let alone published. And I went to a coffee shop. At that time, coffee shops were all the craze, and I would sit and I'd have coffee and build friendships, and every now and again I'd talk to people about the faith that I had in Christ and hear about their experiences of faith. And one day I sat down and I was having my coffee and talking to people, and this one gentleman sat down and said, so you're a Christian? Yes. And we started talking about our faith, and at one moment he looked very seriously and he said, here's the thing. I really like Jesus. I read about his life and I think, wow, if we all lived like that, wouldn't the world be so much better? And there was something about him you just can't but fall in love with. But when I go to the churches, that's not what I see. I don't see that difference. And you know what's more? Somebody like me just isn't welcome. And I'll tell you, that shook me up as a young preacher. To hear this very intelligent, articulate man, obviously on a spiritual quest, because we talk about all kinds of faiths and philosophies and backgrounds, telling me that he loved my Jesus. And he thought that the life Jesus taught was where it's at. And then he had a desire to learn about that. But the churches he saw, he wasn't welcome. And in his case, just simply because he was a man with questions, a man who wasn't sure about a lot of the dogma he'd seen. That haunted me. And I would say throughout the rest of the ministry that followed, and even down to today, that interchange at the coffee shop, where I'd been told, go and, share my faith, it changed me. And in his struggle, I think I heard the voice of God calling. Because I continued to encounter people who said that they loved this Jesus that they read about in the Bible. But when they heard the church talk, when they saw it act, it didn't seem to have anything in common. And someone like them wasn't welcome. A turning point reached for me when my wife and I were doing ministry, and we encountered gay and lesbian and transgendered people, and they also were falling in love with just Jesus. But when they came to the sort of churches that even we were serving in, they found themselves being turned away. And they got the message loud and clear that people like them weren't welcome to learn about this Jesus. And that troubled me to no end, because when I read the Gospels, I found, you know what? Jesus welcomed everyone to the table. There wasn't one of them that he sent away. And that desire to reach out and help those who have this love for the Jesus they find, this desire to learn about his way, but also have gotten the message. There is not a place for them to learn about someone like them. Drove me. And is a part of what I think drove both me and Kat to begin our first church start, Safe Haven Christian Community Church, which focused on people with disabilities who often weren't given an opportunity, and also people who are transgendered, who in the community we were serving and living in often were even pushed away from otherwise gay-friendly churches. And since then we've started several small churches. Some of them lasted and some of them didn't, but all of them had the hope of being places that people who got the message, someone like you isn't able to come and learn about Jesus, can come and learn with us, who don't have all the answers, but are on the way. And I share this story because I wonder if some of you out there have noticed that in your life. If you have yourself fallen in love with Jesus and seen how he can change your life and the world, but you have found people around you saying, you know what, I like this Jesus. I like this Jesus you tell me about and that I read about in the Bible, but you know, I don't think there's a place for me to learn about that, a place for the people in my life that matter. If you have noticed that, I want to invite you. One of my visions, one of my dreams, is to see all over this country, all over this world, Christian communities starting up that are centered not around all the doctrine and the dogma and the rituals, and this is how it's always been done, and not about how you're dressed, or if you're gay, or if you're straight, or any of those sort of politics that keep people away, but focus on Jesus and his teachings and his life. I want to invite you to consider, is God calling you to those experiences like mine that you've had, calling you to be a part of a movement that begins to start up communities where people who've been told they aren't welcome can also encounter Jesus. Right now, my wife and I and another lady in our community are all co-pastoring a church that began just like that, Diversity in Faith, a Christian church for all people. It began meeting in a coffee shop, just saying all are welcome and none of your questions are too silly or wrong, and we'll talk about them. And it's grown into a small church here in Fayetteville, North Carolina, serving Fort Bragg and the rest of the Sand Hills region. And I'm right now serving as the Mid-Atlantic Conference Coordinator for the Progressive Christian Alliance, which is a community of ministries that are focused on building just those sorts of communities where all can come and sit at the feet of Jesus and learn how to live his life so that their communities can be changed. In my dream, my vision for my neck of the woods where I live, where there's not a lot of places if you have questions and you're not certain about this or that, where maybe you're not the straight-laced, I'm wearing a suit and tie, and maybe you got some baggage, and maybe you're not straight and white and male. Maybe you're gay or transgendered, or maybe you're a woman called to speak. There's just not a lot of communities like that here, where people like that have a place to stay, a place to learn, a place to grow and to serve. And my dream is that while I'm serving in these two positions as a pastor at Diversity in Faith and a conference coordinator with the Progressive Christian Alliance, is to help others who feel this call around you answer it and find a way to make a difference. And so I want to challenge you. Are you called? Do you feel that voice of Christ saying, help me build places so that those who have been left out can find their way home, find their way at my feet, to my feet, and that changes community, because it's my dream and my prayer that all over the southeast where I'm from, we'll see such communities be born. And not just here, but throughout God's grateful. And if you feel that call, I encourage you to contact me. You can contact me on Facebook. Look for Michael Royal. You can also contact me on email at Reverend, R-E-V-E-R-E-N-D, _ Micah, M-I-C-A-H, at yahoo.com. And you can contact the association that my church is part of, the Progressive Christian Alliance, at info@progressivechristianalliance.com. And we can help you find your way in building new churches, new ministries, new communities that welcome all, and that are places for following the footsteps of Jesus. Is what it's about. Blessings on you.